Now for our featured event of the day. As many of you know, this marks the centennial year for the Chamber of Commerce, 100 years of the business community working and supporting the city of Las Vegas and its growth. And we want to carry on that tradition by presenting to you what we think will be a fascinating event for you today, and that's our mayoral debate. We're pleased to have both of the candidates, the finalists who survived the primary election for the office of mayor, Chris Giunchigliani and Carolyn Goodman, and they will be joining us today. And I would pleased to introduce to you the moderator of today's debate, Jon Ralston, one of our community's leading political columnists, host of Face to Face with Jon Ralston. So at this time, could I invite Mr. Ralston and Commissioner Giunchigliani and Carolyn Goodman up to the podium, please. As they are preparing to join us at the stage, I just wanted to make one comment, and Jon Ralston will also make this point to you. For today's event, we have solicited comments and questions from members of the Chamber via email, and Jon has been provided with that information. For this reason, we will not be taking questions from the floor today, but Jon, I assure you, will have some great questions for the candidates. So with that, I'd like to turn the podium over to Mr. Ralston.
Hi, folks. Ready for some fun? That's what we're here for. Just so you know, the candidates have been told general topics, business topics. And Carolyn Goodman and Chris Giunchigliani, you can come on up here. Come on. Where are they? Carolyn, come on up. There's Chris. Look at this. The left and the right. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Hi.
How are you?
I couldn't be better. I almost fell up the steps, though. Thank you.
Let me just tell everybody how this is going to work and what the candidates have been told. The candidates have been told that this is generally going to be about business topics. They don't know what the questions are. Even the chamber folks took a big chance and let me come up with the questions. So they don't know. The candidates have been told, and they can contradict me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure both of these ladies would, that they have 2 minutes to answer the original question, and then I'm going to facilitate a discussion among them on these various business topics. And at the end, they each get to make 2-minute closing statements. Is that what you've been told? Do I have it right?
It sounds good to me. Yep.
All right, sounds good to me too. Again, let's conduct this in a civil way. No catcalls or cheering from the audience. Let's try to get as much illumination as we can from each of these candidates. Chris Giunchigliani, I understand, won the coin toss, and so she will answer first. She has 2 minutes. We have a timekeeper right down here. So let me start with the first question.
Okay.
What will the candidates do to rein in the long-term costs of the public employee retirement system, and why do they feel the public sector needs such defined benefit plans when those of us in the private world must get by with defined contribution plans such as 401ks?
Okay.
Commissioner.
Thank you. Chris Giunchigliani. Thank you to the Las Vegas Chamber for doing this. I appreciate it. And thank you to Carolyn Goodman, because I think it's great that 2 women with CG are actually in the finals. So, public employee benefits, I'd like to tell you that the mayor has control over that. They don't. But what they can do is use the voice of making sure that we have reasonable application to the public employee benefits. There are changes that are being advocated in the legislature right now. Through your own reform package, actually you have some suggestions that will help. I might make a recommendation for a couple of them that were started last session that have not been completed yet, and that is continuing to increase the age of the recipients. We have people that get out of public service way too young that have an impact on the actuarial plan. That then causes a potential down the road for people to be negatively impacted. They made some changes last session with the help of the chamber, but did not go far enough as far as that's concerned. But I don't think there's anything wrong with having public employees make a livable wage and have retirement that is funded and adequate. In the 70s, when that system was started, it was started by a conservative Republican senator. Teachers, police, firefighters, and state employees gave up 7.5% of their salary to pre-fund that. The problem is, over the years, it has not kept pace with the actual investments that come into play, and as changes were made, ages were lowered, and that has become a burden on the system. So hopefully those are some things that they'll be taking a look at. Thank you.
All right. Carolyn Goodman, you're up.
I really believe that you cannot take away that which you have already given. And many people who are relying on the benefits and have created a lifestyle based on those benefits and are now aging, that needs to be something that we honor as best we can. But I do believe with all the benefits in the program, they need to be more reflective of the private sector and more reflective of what's going on in the economy. We will be in a terrible situation if we bring in new members and new PERS benefit people and do not make those adjustments. I am absolutely behind it being more reflective of the local economy and how it is moving along year by year.
Okay, we're off to a good start. Neither of them answered the question, so now we're going to get specific.
That's the sign of a learning politician. Let me tell you, I am learning this.
So we'll start with you now, Carolyn Goodman. I'm going to try to see where each of you stand on, you saw those signs about reform out there. The Chamber has very, very strong positions on this issue. Would you support the conversion to a defined contribution from a defined benefit? And by the way, I am not going to accept the mayor has nothing to do with this answer, because the mayor can lobby the legislature, the mayor can be a voice in this.
Would I move to, say it again, please.
A defined contribution from a defined benefit, which is one of the big issues that's going to be debated in Carson City.
After full examination, depending when that would be and when that would be enforced, with all the information pointing to that being the right thing to do, I would absolutely do that.
So you'd study it, or you would do it, or you wouldn't do it?
I would study it. I would study it in relation to the economy at the time and what is on the table. I am very much about the transparency of issues and about bringing people together. I will never make a decision without being fully informed, and this is an issue that needs full information.
Commissioner.
No, I will not support changing to from the current system. However, there are reforms that were mentioned within your package, actually, in your business voice, that could be part of the discussion. What we don't want to have happen is have the community underfunded because you have an underfunded system. If you make a change now to that system of not having people paying in, you will actuarially destabilize it. Actually, the PERS system has outperformed the S&P 500 in the woes of the years of economics in the last 4 to 5 years. Their portfolio did bloom to a $10 billion from the 4.6, but they're back on a savings component. If you begin by making the changes now with the employees that are contributing, you will actually destabilize it, and therefore those investments will become a burden on the community, which is exactly what we're trying not to have happen. But as I have suggested, there are reforms that can be made, and one has to deal with the fact that we have to look at the age of people aging out. There also needs to be some look at contribution levels. Are they adequate? Do I need to pay more as an individual or not? And those are questions that I think are before the legislature right now as we speak.
Well, the Chamber seems to think that allowing the public employees to participate in Social Security, we're only one of 7 states that does not allow those employees. Is that a good idea?
In Social Security, I've earned my own quarters because I've worked in both private sector and not. Many individuals that are in the public employee field went right straight from college or from their original graduation directly into the system. So forcing them into something that they can't earn money from does not make sense to me, because that will become a greater burden to the society. And
what
that's
about
what
giving
we're
them a
trying to
choice? What about giving them a choice to go into the Social Security system?
You have to, well, again, actuarially, anybody wants to do a cost-benefit analysis, you need to make sure that you're not underfunding something. And if you let that choice and people move out of a system that you've based them on, it's been a 40-year plan on how to get it actuarially stabilized so that it's fully funded. If you take that away, you then create a destabilization. And I don't think that's what anybody wants, because then that becomes a burden on the taxpayer, which we should not do.
What about Social Security, Carolyn Goodman? Should public employees be allowed to participate in Social Security?
Under the current plan, no. I mean, I think that's a choice that perhaps, again, could be looked at, being not a politician here and not being on the inside of it, and I'm not part of the PERS plan. And the program and business I started does not have PERS. It's a nonprofit entity. So I would think that would be something, were I a public employee and had the choice to go into the retired PERS program, I would certainly choose that. Being on the private sector, I would think, boy, wouldn't I like to be part of that program? So in my opinion, they're taking a choice. They would not opt for the FICA and Social Security.
Are there any specific reforms that you can think of that you would advocate? Because this is maybe the biggest single issue for this group right here, for PERS.
You know, I really am sensitive to this issue because I do have friends who have been long-time PERS investment people. And I appreciate what they're doing in the public sector, but I see how the scale has tipped. And being novice to this, at this point, I cannot give you suggestions, but I am a person of ideas. And I know when we went to steal people from the public sector to come to the business I wanted to start, almost to a fault, each one said, I am vested in PERS already. I can't walk away from that investment. And I thought, there's something wrong here. I'm offering you a better job with higher pay, and you can't leave PERS. And that was 30 years ago, was my first introduction. And were I an individual coming in brand clean and nothing changed, I would opt for PERS myself. Why would I want to go into the Social Security program right now and FICA when those issues in the federal level are in jeopardy perhaps as well?
Is she right? Is something wrong? Because she's saying they try to recruit, and you hear this in the private sector a lot, try to recruit people from the public sector, and that they have this Cadillac plan with PERS they'll never leave. Am I translating correctly?
I'm so sorry. I had a flu from my husband, and now I've thrown my rib out. So sorry.
Are you claiming injury now?
I might.
Okay. What is she right? Is she wrong?
I'm sorry, I could not actually hear what you said, John. Do you mind?
She essentially said that even 30 years ago, when she tried to recruit people from the public sector, they said, "Oh, I'm in PERS. I can't leave PERS because it's such a generous plan that's a real problem." Is she right?
In my understanding, in the 70s, when it was created, every public employee group actually reduced their salary to pre-fund the PERS system, and so Carolyn's right about that part of it. State employees were the only group that actually were permitted to do in and out. The decision was made actually as a business plan for financial purposes to make sure that you couldn't opt in and opt out because then that destabilized it and that let them use that as a bank account. State employees were the only ones that were allowed to go in and out. What people decided to do, the better business plan, was to make it an employer paid with that initial contribution and then a percentage contributed over that time period. As far as competing, I'd have to look to you. I know my personal investments didn't do very well during this economic time, and that is an impact. I don't want folks to be out there in the private or public sector that do not have retirement that they can then live in dignity as they exit their years. I don't believe that PERS is the issue. To me, it was a business plan that was put together. It was well-financed. It was laid out to be actuarial sound. It's no different than when you put a business plan together for your companies. You figure it out, you go back, you double-check, you make sure you're moving forward, but you don't pull out from underneath because then you have now destabilized it, and then that becomes a burden on the taxpayer. And no employee, public or private, wants that to happen.
Anything else? I'll let you have the last word before we move on if you want it.
Move on.
All right, I'll move on. I follow instructions well sometimes. All right, Carolyn Goodman, you get 2 minutes here first on this. Is another big issue for the folks in this room, and that is collective bargaining and what should be done on collective bargaining. Regarding NRS 288-153, what additional steps might you implement to provide greater and more meaningful public understanding of the fiscal impacts of collective bargaining or collective bargaining agreements between the city and labor organizations? In other words, how much transparency? You've talked about transparency. Should these bargaining sessions be open? What other reform is needed?
And I have 2 minutes.
You have 2 minutes.
So I want to digress for 1 second. I was a voice, one voice alone, when I tried to do something, and it was at the point that I became 300 voices that I was heard. I learned very quickly that collective group discussion gets a greater impact than somebody alone. So I am about the right of every individual to choose whether to be part of collective bargaining and the union or not. That's the first thing. But I am pro-collective bargaining. However, I am about the leadership in collective bargaining, representing the rank and file honestly, and I am also about open and transparent public involvement in the process. At the point a contract is imminent and all the work's been done, before that's voted upon and finalized, that needs to be in front of the public. This is our community, and I believe that everybody in every single union in this state, this is their community as well. And they have a vested interest in what we're providing in this community. So there's a glitch here where we're not working together. And I think the key will be the transparency and bringing that out into the open so that all dialogues, where need be at the final stages, are out here in the public. And it's totally transparent to all of you, to me, and to all of us who live here.
Commissioner.
I support collective bargaining as well, and I've also been a proponent of open bargaining. I actually negotiated back in the 70s with in Kansas, where we actually had open, transparent negotiations. And I think that's good, because then the general public can see what's going on. We as elected officials can see what's going on. A lot of times we have not taken the opportunity. We're told we can't even sit in the room to even observe, to even know what our people have put across the table to negotiate. But collective bargaining means that you have a partnership. You bring employee and employer together. The whole point is to have that conversation. What's working in business, what's working in the county, what's working in the city, wherever it may be. It's an opportunity, and it's an opportunity lost if we don't allow people to bargain a contract under that. But it's also a lost opportunity if we don't maintain the language that's currently in state law that says you have to make a ruling on ability to pay. Management put that in, and I supported that. Those are the types of things. But bargaining in the open, making sure you make a finding of what savings are there. I'll look to the city of Las Vegas, and I commend them for this, because they were the first ones that actually did the negotiations. And I believe through their concessions, they saved close to $36 million. And you have now defined a new type of employee and salary package, which is what the private sector has been asking for. We have done the same thing at the county. We will continue to move forward. But to take away collective bargaining rights, I absolutely will not support.
All right, we've established they both support transparency. Anybody here against transparency? Because you should. No. All right.
And truth.
Now we're.
Could I add one more thing?
You can add one thing, but I want to follow up, because the key issue here in collective bargaining is, when do you start the transparency? And I think you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you think after the final contract has been negotiated, then the public should have the right to see it. But I think a lot of people think it should start earlier. In other words, it's our money that's being negotiated. Why not open up some of these negotiations?
I would agree with that. I was just trying to save busy people a lot of time before it's voted upon. I mean, I like all the work to be done first, then bring me the information. Let me make an assessment, take it to my body, whichever group that is, and say, these are the issues, take a look at it, and let's go back, rather than all of us being involved in the minutia all the way up. However, should there be an interest, I don't see anything that would be wrong with that. I know there was allusion in some of these 17 or whatever there have been debates that we've had in the primaries about things going on behind closed doors. Well, unless I married the wrong man 49 years ago, I never heard of closed doors down at the city. So I don't know what the allusion was to, that things are going on behind closed doors, but I will say, if that became a problem and there was a suggestion of some impropriety, I would certainly want that open as well.
Well, let me try to articulate for you what your husband's frustration actually was probably with that, which is that the staff is negotiating this with the representatives of the union, and then the elected officials essentially get presented with a fait accompli. The argument is, open it up so all along the way, so you, if you're mayor, can say that's terrible, or you want to expose to the public that the union's offer that they're making at the beginning in the middle is not good. What about that kind of transparency?
One of the issues that I know for sure at the city, we have wonderful staff, wonderful salaried employees whose jobs have been articulated to do certain parts of the work. And if you trust those with whom you work, if you don't, shame on you, you should get rid of them. But you have to believe in the people you hire that work for you. And therefore, they become your ego in that process, listening, and at the point there's some problem, I would certainly hope they would call me in and say, as the voice and face of the city, you need to be involved in this. And so I would absolutely agree with you, wherever, at that level, wherever those negotiations are, that there needs to be a bigger open public awareness that's where it should be.
Just
then.
for the record, you're not agreeing with me, you're agreeing with the chamber. I don't want to be associated with the chamber. Okay. Just kidding. I'm just
I hope you don't buy him lunch.
Just kidding. I'm
Ouch.
just kidding. No.
As I said in my initial answer.
But let me ask you a serious question. I'm going to follow up in the same way. I mean, you're a former union leader. You've negotiated these kinds of things. You're against having the public see what you guys are up to in
Not
those
at all.
meetings, aren't you?
What I said is I actually have bargained under a total open process where the press
Does
is
it work?
sitting in, and it works. Absolutely. We should not be afraid of that. In fact, we don't need law to tell us that. We can put it in our collective bargaining ground rules right now. Right now. And so therefore, for those of us that are going back to the table, that we just settled 2 more contracts yesterday, for example, at the county, the commission has asked for direction because our DA has told us, oh, you can't sit in. I believe we should be able to sit in. We're eyes and ears and expecting to see what happens with the dollars as well. I don't even know as a commissioner what we even asked employees to give up. That's wrong. So we don't even have our own transparency in our own government, which is wrong. Because if I'm going to be held accountable, and I don't have any problems with that, then I need to be at the table to know what they're doing. I don't want to bargain it, but I want to know what they've asked. I want to give direction, say, I want you to fix sick leave. I want you to make sure that you're doing this on work hours. I want to make sure that you don't ever, management, have the same department approving, the same managers approving their own sick leave. It shouldn't have to be an elected official to tell them how stupid that is. But we had to do that. We should, the elected officials have an obligation, and transparency is one thing we should not be afraid of. And I absolutely support bargaining in public.
So open up from the beginning. You're both fine with that, correct?
Yes.
You all right with that, Betsy? I'm just kidding. And anyhow, what about binding arbitration? I think the chamber would like to see binding arbitration taken out of NRS 288. You support that?
No, I don't. Binding arbitration really is the hammer that was actually added later into the legislation when employees actually had the right to strike. The decision was made both with management and employees that they did not want police, fire, especially in their safety areas, or teachers to go out on strike. So they made the decision to add the binding arbitration. Fire and police had that for about 20 years. Teachers actually just got that right in the 90s, early 90s. That said, it's the hammer to make them stay at the table, because the risk is you put it on the table and at some point you have to have closure. And it's a responsible way to do it. I don't want people going out on strike. That was something that was given up. But in the long run, you still need to make sure that the arbitrator, if they don't settle it at the contract table, that the arbitrator must base it on the ability to pay, because that is part of what the circumstances are in government at that particular time, so that they know when they're making a ruling, it's not based on what they paid at the state or what happens someplace else. It's based on Nevada economics, and that's very key to maintaining the actual best offer arbitration.
What about you? Do you agree or disagree with the chamber getting rid of binding arbitration from 288?
I am opposed to binding arbitration. I believe that the elected officials are the ones that should be involved there. I believe also that in anything that's binding, and if you not have come to a resolve, you haven't brought the right issues to the table to the two sides. They need to know this is their community, our community. We all live here. There has to be some give and take on both sides. The business that I created, anytime there was an issue, anybody had an open door to my office, anytime. And the first thing I did was brought in the other side. It's a microcosm, this little business. It's only a $17 million business with 150 employees that never had a layoff, never. That's gotten a raise every year, including this recession year. And when there was a problem of two sides, they came to the table. And I listened. I didn't talk. I listened. And at the time, they had their best offer on the table, and the other side had their best offer. I said, all right, somebody's got to give a little bit more on each side. So I am against binding arbitration. Something was wrong the step before. And the elected officials that represent our community are the ones that need to be involved in that.
So, okay, we've established a clear difference. So let's talk about it for a couple of minutes. I mean, it seems it might even be a contradiction, Commissioner. You're saying you want to be more involved, and you think the elected officials should be. And Carolyn Goodman is essentially saying, if you get the elected officials involved, they can force a resolution rather than having some arbitrator who might make a decision, isn't elected by us, and might make a bad decision for the taxpayers.
Not if you look at past behavior. The elected officials have been as involved as they've chosen to do, and they gave away the store in some cases. So I'm not sure necessarily necessarily that the elected officials serving as the final arbitrator makes good sense to me, because what you do then is you create it back to a parent-child relationship. What the whole point of collective bargaining is that I, as your employee, have some ideas on how to maybe do business better. There are issues in the workplace that maybe not be aware that management is not conveying necessarily to the elected folks. In the long run, by having an open negotiations process where everybody's there, we give direction as far as what do we want them to bargain or not bargain, where we're going to hold or not hold, then we have a process to keep people at the table. The best way to do it is to focus on getting a win-win. That's how I've always worked. That's how you look at strengths, skills, and opportunity for people. Collective bargaining did not cause this problem. The economic downturn is global. And I'm amazed that we're still talking about that about 15 minutes in this and not talking about how do we get businesses back to work in City of Las Vegas.
Don't worry, we'll get there. Don't worry, be patient. Let's talk, but an ancillary topic, and so let's discuss it now, is the Chamber has done studies that show that local government salaries here are higher than most places. And a lot of people say it's because of the collective bargaining process. Are the salaries too high, and what will you do about it?
Well, as I said before, I think once you give somebody something, it's very difficult to take it away because they've gone ahead and established their lifestyle. But yes, I mean, the first thing when we came to town, I went out to hoof around, get a job, and I found out that the government paid better. Guess what? They didn't hire me. So I ended up with a less salaried job, which I learned a great deal from, and I loved it. But absolutely, government jobs forever, except for IBM. When I was young, really young, IBM paid almost as well. So, what can I do about it? What could I do about it as mayor? I go back to the fact that I am just a person who's lived here and raised a family here, have been married to the same man all these years, have listened to what's going on at the city. I would work and see what could be done at entry level to make it more reflective of the private sector. I am a very definitely supportive private industry all the way, and less government's better. And I would work to find out, not take away, you can't take away, but everybody coming in get more equitable and balanced.
Did your husband have the same experience you did, that when he went into government it was a pay increase?
Poor little soul, couldn't even pay, forget it. He couldn't pay anything on his $50,000.
Right,
what a hit we took.
Last word on this topic. What do you think the local government salaries are too high, and what would you do about it?
In some cases, yes. And the Chamber of Commerce's own report also pointed out that a policy decision was made by local governments, including business 20 years ago, that said we will not increase the number of hiring of people. We would rather pay salaries higher. That was a policy decision that has to be changed. It's grown past its time. What worked then doesn't work now. And hence, I would say both local governments that I'm associated with had their employees take concessions so that you have a new definition of an employee so that their wages are commensurate with the private sector. I commend the employee groups for stepping up to the table and taking that initiative. That's what the Chamber, I believe, was also calling for, is saying, look at what we did business. I'd rather hire folks now in order to make sure I'm delivering the service that you expect, be it business licensing. I don't want to hear now that economic times are slowed that it takes you 4 weeks to get a business license because we cut the staff so much. Part of that is a conscious decision that we will have to make. But that means if we lower that beginning salary, we add more staff, then in the next 10 or 15 years it'll again equalize itself, and then we need to step back and get and see if that's working. What we don't tend to do in government well is plan. Plan, review, revise, reinitiate. That's part of why I'm running for mayor. Thank you.
Now we're going to get back to where you each have 2 minutes to answer a question on a different topic. Nevada, the folks in this room, I think a lot of them are frustrated that Nevada is supposed to be a right-to-work state, and yet all these project labor agreements are foisted on them. Where do you stand on that?
I supported project labor agreements, and the county voted yesterday to put one on the North Tower. But I think that the euphemism or the statement that they're out of, there's only 3 that I'm aware of that actually exist in the entire state of Nevada. So it's worked very well for the Water Authority, it's worked very well for the airport, and we hope it will work to put local Nevadans back to work. Part of the PLA concept which we both, I think the city and the county, I know I initiated the resolution, I think Councilman Ross did in the city, to require that, to go to the legislature to urge them to make sure that we're hiring local businesses, local architects, local engineers. We don't need somebody from out of state when we have this kind of climate here. And PLA allows you that opportunity to be able to look at the local hiring. And a diverse population. It's time that we do more of a promotion, similar to what they do, I'm sorry to use the name, but the MGM Grant. They have a supplier or construction diversity program that looks at women and minority-owned businesses and LGBT. Those are times, it's time that business looks at private sector for us to get some ideas on how to do business a little bit differently, so we're rewarding those people. So I don't have a problem with a PLA.
You have any problem with PLAs?
Yes.
Okay.
I do believe that the project labor agreement intention is a very good one, where the quality of work is guaranteed to the top quality of craftsmen, for example. However, I believe in a case-by-case review, and that's what I would promote. I think the intent of the project labor agreement is there because of quality and quality protection. But I don't think that's necessarily accurate, and I would want to see a case-by-case review of that.
Why do we need PLAs? Why?
Basically, it's the stabilization, the quality of the trades, and the prevention of any kind of strike. That saves the taxpayer money and makes sure that the project moves along and does it within the time. Every project that's been under a PLA, and again, there's only 2 currently to measure against, have completed on time, under budget, and I think that helps the taxpayer in the long run.
So you think that the argument that they do end up costing more money is wrong because of the experience you've had at the county?
With the airport and the water authority, absolutely. And we have to make that finding. For those that may not be aware, the Supreme Court, this went all the way up to the Supreme Court. They issued a ruling. The public sector must make specific findings to make sure that that agreement even can go forward. So we put a checks and balances there. That's why not every project is subject to a PLA.
The reason I am for the project-by-project review, I think it's very healthy. It's about competition, and it's about private industry. And certainly anybody who had a company that gave less than quality work would not have a company anymore to get a recommendation to do something else. So I think a project-by-project review would be appropriate, though I do see what is behind how that came to be.
You're generally not in favor of them, though, correct?
Correct. Generally, yes.
I would just also point out, John, though, that if the Regional Justice Center construction had been under a PLA, we would not have expended close to $500 million in overruns and still be in court on that one, because we did not do that well. Those are the types of things that we have a responsibility. But I have to tell you, the legislature has made changes. We have design build. We have design construction manager at risk. There's legislation to look at how we do construction differently. All of those ought to be experienced and explored and brought to our local government, and we're doing that.
Don't you want to remind people that the RJC was before your time on the commission? They may think you were there.
They would know that if they watched Channel 4, and they'd know that I was the only one that actually read the report that came in.
That's probably right. Go
Let
ahead.
me add one other thing, too. In this very microcosm of a small world in which I've lived for 26 years, which is non-unionized, because everybody's treated with quality of work, and each individual is valued for their input to whatever we're doing. We have a 40-acre site. It is fully built out. Every single project was done well, exceptionally, to be as a matter of fact, was brought in early and under budget. And so the private sector can do an awful lot when it's put to that. And we have gone back to our general contractors because they did an excellent job. Where there's a subcontractor that hasn't done an excellent job, he's been released from the job. I'm about competition, about everything this country was founded upon, and competition in the private sector knows where that is.
All right, I think we've covered this topic. Let's move on to the next one, and I'm going to follow Chris G's instructions now. We're going to talk about jobs and businesses, okay? I think you're first on this one. How do you plan to attract new industries, create jobs, and here's the tough one, what would you do different from your predecessor?
You know, I was on his show. There was one of these multi-people debates, which has been an experience, but I think we were down to 5 or 6 at the time. And he asked something that was so cute. I said, you know, I think I'm falling in love with you. Do you remember that?
I do,
You
vividly.
do. So anyway, my husband's sitting right here, and now he's heard it for the first time. But anyway, what my sense is and the things that we're going to do, this has been a wonderful learning experience for me as I've been out in the field. And I certainly am about taking the leadership to be the voice and face of Las Vegas, to get out there around this country, to go ahead and promote what a wonderful place this is to live, to bring in new businesses. And speaking of that, I was invited to Tony Hsieh's recent meeting with an urban developer who created the class, what is it called? The class, creative class. And bringing
No more
it
helping,
into downtown. Sorry, I'm sorry. I mean, I did say that. But while I was out and being taped for a video, I also ran into people from the film industry. And in 1995, they brought Casino here and did everything in the filming right here in Las Vegas. And when I was out having this video done, I said to the gentleman, he said, you know, I'm from back east with you. I'm a member of the Directors Guild. There are less than 2,000 of us in the world. If you get elected, I want to be part of bringing that film industry in to Las Vegas. We are the perfect site for it. There's land for it. And right now, up at the Assembly, are bills that are being put forth to give the tax incentives right now, right here, to us in Las Vegas to make this move forward. I had breakfast yesterday in this hotel with people from the film and TV industry who are absolutely blown away by the idea and want to move on it. And I promise you, the day that I am elected, I will be calling those people to come in here and take advantage of everything we offer. They are now up in Canada going to Toronto. It's a very costly move to ship everything or build up there where it's freezing cold most of the time. We're an hour away from LA. We have no corporate tax. We have no...
We're at 2 minutes. I'm sorry. I know you're just getting revved
corporate
up. But you're at 2 minutes.
And no
we'll talk more about this issue. Let's let the commissioner answer. Go ahead.
Okay, the question is, what is my plan for economic development?
Yeah, how do you attract new businesses, create jobs, and what would you do different than the current mayor, if anything?
I had a plan when I first got into this race, and I continue to talk about that. We have to rethink government in Nevada and in Clark County and in the city of Las Vegas. That means we have to promote through leadership and role modeling that we're going to do business differently. We can be the cleanest, friendliest, most customer service based. And the way you do that is, number one, sitting with small businesses or any business for that matter and having them walk through the myriad of bureaucracy that they have to go through for a local government to get a single form filled out. My proposal from day one was we need one application, one fee. Number two, I also said that it's also time that we should use the technology that should be available to us so you can actually do your own application from at home or at a kiosk in the local government. Those are different things that we can do differently that help people get to work. Third thing that we can do is make sure that I have proposed a revolving loan fund using some of the redevelopment dollars to be able to assist businesses to get up and running because loans are not being offered by the banks at this point in time, or it's very difficult. And fourth, what we ought to do is talk to all of you that are in business already in Las Vegas. We have tended to only talk about, let's recruit somebody from outside. What about growing our own? What about sitting down with you and saying, hey, you know what, would you come to our core? Any great city has a core downtown. I'm from Chicago. I absolutely promote what was started, but it wasn't master planned. And that's part of the difference on how I'm going to do business down there. I appreciate and applaud the current mayor and the city council for their championship. I live downtown. I wrote most of the legislation that allowed them to do some of what they were doing as far as incentives. But we need to do more. We need infill development that puts people back to work. We need infrastructure jobs that are out there so that we're actually building sidewalks that people can walk on to get to the Beat Cafe, which we have not done yet. Those are just some of my proposals, but I'll be happy to answer more later when I get my time back.
All right, let's talk more details here, Carolyn Goodman. It is one thing, and obviously your husband has been an ambassador and he's been able to attract business here, and you talk about doing that with the film industry. But as mayor, you do have limited powers, and Chris Giunchigliani's laid out a series of steps as mayor she would take policies. What are the details that you have to do that?
Well, you know, it's something that I feel, first of all, going back and looking over those details, some of the things that I know in 2009, the County Redevelopment Agency was brought to its knees and closed down so that $37 million could be spread around in different budget areas. This morning I read the newspaper and I saw that our Mr. Gillespie is looking at losing his $50 million that's set aside for emergencies to take care of Metro. I don't think you rob Peter to pay Paul. And I did read that Commissioner Sisolak had spoken to that. So I am really about the jobs, in creating the jobs that are going to be here and creating the business. The first thing is, yes, the mayor is limited in what he or she could do, but it has to be out there. We have to talk and sell the vitality of our community, the energy. What's in the late 70s, Steve Wynn, in a recession, rebuilt the Golden Nugget, which brought back downtown. And that subsequently brought health to the county. Right now, what is happening is downtown is healthy. The different entities have come together, created sacrifice, and we do have small businesses starting all over downtown. 3 more are opening on the 26th. I am about fanning that and seeking new ways. Yes, training facilities. I spoke to the people in the film industry. I said, not only do you need to be in the schools, you need to be providing those who don't have talents and haven't developed skills to come in and work. So small business, I would go after small business, I'd go after large business, and it's like the flights coming in nonstop from British Air. It is about the personality and the sense of what is going on here, the true sense of who we are and what we want, selling Las Vegas, because the mayor only has to coordinate and get the votes. He's got to build confidence to get the majority of the votes of the city council to pass anything. And that is leadership, that's experience, that's running a business, and that's knowing how to attract both small and large businesses here. Specific types of business, you want to hear specific businesses from me?
Not yet.
I will give you a litany.
Let me ask you a different question. You know, for a politician, you did slip in those nice little shots at the county there at the beginning. That was good. I'll let the commissioner respond to those in a second.
Nobody said you were stupid, John, ever.
But first, Chris Giunchigliani has said here, and she's presented details of what she would do as mayor. A lot of these folks in this room talk about the oppressive hand of government. It's too hard to do things because of all the things government wants them to do. What are you going to do specifically to make it easier for businesses, not just downtown, but anywhere, to do business with the city?
This has been talked about in all of our debates. Everybody on the same bandwagon. Streamline all the processes. Marilyn Patrick right now has something to put all building and zoning applications in one place at one site at one time. These are reasonable things to be doing. And what has happened and what's going to happen, were I the mayor, I would absolutely advocate for streamlining and making it more efficient, specifically to different businesses, but we must keep in mind, income has to keep coming into the city to pay off the bonds that have been let there. You cannot have the Neonopolis not pay off its bond to the private bondholders. So there's always another side, and it's always about finances. You can't take blood from a stone. We have to make sure we can't wipe away, for instance, all the traffic meters or the parking meters that are there. The city right now is working on a plan to have reduced or free parking in one of the in the Neonopolis parking garage. There are things that are already in work in many of the items already on that plan that are already in the works and review, whether it's expanding the redevelopment area and freedom on wavering on liquor taxes and tavern taxes, maybe beyond the redevelopment area.
Okay.
That's already in consideration. So all of these things I can give you lists. We can go to
We're going to be here for dinner if you do, though. Let me let Chris Giunchigliani respond. And it's up to you if you want to respond. I counted now 3 shots altogether at the county. You can respond to none or all 3 or do whatever you want.
I was prudent and closed the redevelopment area because it had gotten started late. There was no funding in it and took money away from schools and UMC, and I didn't think the taxpayer needed to contribute that anymore, and it was the responsible thing to do, number 1. Number 2, I have been very clear. Yesterday on the Metropolitan Police Department, here's how we can have a savings for both the city and the county. We have 2 groups that are run by other people that we fund. Metro's budget in 2004 for their ending fund reserve was $500,000. It is $84 million now. There is no reason that we should be funding a formula that does not go to putting police out on the streets, but just builds a savings savings account, which then if we reallocated it, we could wipe out the budget shortfall that the city of Las Vegas has for the $7.5 million to $10 million just by having that decrease and still be prudent with regard to the reserves. That said, that's part of what I'm talking about, why I'm running. It's about the willingness to lead. You have to change business, you have to know business, and you have to work with business. I don't have all the answers. You do. I am a good listener, though. And I have taken the time to walk businesses. I've gone in and had them file the permits so I can see firsthand what they're doing. I've had Chris Darling from one of the construction, or from one of the rehab areas, actually did a flow chart for me for what he ran into. I met with small businesses because that's still the backbone of our community and should be the backbone of our community, helping them to grow by streamlining, by putting applications online, by making sure that, yes, we do have parking available for their customers to be able to generate in their goods and services. But more importantly, I plan on having a mayor's business council. We need to constantly seek to update ourselves, but we have to do a better job of master planning, and we haven't done a good job of planning, and my opponent even said that about the current administration that's there. So, recognizing that part of it, let's figure out what we can do. Can't is a swear word in my classroom, because that usually means what I won't do. I see this town as an opportunity to grow in a different way that we haven't ever done before. We have to protect our entertainment capital of the world. But ladies and gentlemen, it's about the everyday work that you do that we should be promoting. We should make sure that we're your customer service. Train your employees, model it. If I see paper trash on the floor, I should be picking it up, so I'm modeling it as well. It starts with higher expectations. And I believe that the city of Las Vegas is the most dynamic city in the world, and we can do anything we want to, but we have to do it differently. And I believe I bring that perspective because I'm a collaborator and I'm a good listener. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, and you passed up an easy shot at Neonopolis. I'm shocked.
I didn't do that one.
Oh, okay, all right. Let's do one more topic, and I think that Chris Giunchigliani's first on this. Give some specific, the day that you're elected mayor, specifics that you would do to cut costs at the city of Las Vegas.
I just found the savings if we're able to reduce the reserves with both Metro as well as the health district. That's part one. Part two is from day one, go to every single department, introduce myself, talk about what the mission and the view is going to be. It's going to be a changed culture. The culture is going to be one of service. I am a public employee, and I am proud of that because I was trained that I am a servant to the people, even though I'm a taxpayer as well. And I expect that also from the employees that are there. If you want them to be partners and we have to go in and cut additionally, they will be at the table because they trust that I will go through the budget well enough to know what is needed that will not undermine them. And I believe I've already found the savings if we do it in the prudent way that we've talked about. But that doesn't mean there may not need to be more concessions down the road. We will all share in the pain. We did that at the county. We reduced our salaries as commissioners as just the same as we asked of our employees, and I would do that still the same thing. If we ask for concessions, we should do the same thing. You have to practice what you preach. But from day one, it's about leading and showing that we're customer service based. And then I have proposed already in the county, and I did it at the state years ago, is to have each department establish their efficiency plan, where they as employees and managers jointly think that they can have savings. If that proves out, a percentage goes back to them and a percentage goes back to the budget. It makes them equal partners. They can also tell you where you're short staffed or not short staffed. And I have to commend the city. Just in the last 3 months, the city manager and their staff actually has started to do business process reengineering. We need to do more of that in government, not less. We have to work for you. Government can't do everything, and we shouldn't do everything. But we have to use your dollars well. In 1993, I went to Jim Cashman, and I said, what's hurting you in your business? He sat down, he said, all the fees that the state's doing in all the different forms. I actually introduced legislation that was supported by Ann O'Connell, a very conservative legislator, Joan Lambert, and myself, along with Carol Villardo, and we passed that legislation at the state level. The same thing can be done here. Everybody told me we couldn't consolidate government, and you have to be careful. Not all consolidation saves you money, so you have to watch that.
We're at 2 minutes. Thank you.
Oh, I missed the
No,
time.
you,
Okay.
don't worry.
All right, thank you.
2 minutes. Let's hear some specific cost-cutting measures.
The first thing I would do is absolutely get to know who's working for me in the city. I would definitely call in all the division directors to talk with them. I would absolutely want to see the budget in every division, because the business that I saw, I had oversight over the person that was running the budget. And we sat down every single month for the review. We sat down annually to make sure that it was cost efficient. I would want to see the job descriptions to make sure, knowing that the city already has brought everybody together and has met their budget, including fire, including the marshals, including the judicial staff, security, all have taken sacrifice. All have come together as a unit and a family to make it work downtown. These issues, yes, there are issues downtown, but this has been a huge, huge success of what's going on. I would want to see those budgets. I would want to sit down with Betsy Fretwell and go through it, but go through it with each division level to make sure that we were, in fact, penny wise on each thing we were doing. I have managed and operated and helped create the budget, and I know from being a business person what it's like to be doing it and not sitting on a bank of people that has never had a business, never run a business, never created a budget, and therefore those are issues that I would guarantee you would see from me, to make sure that every person who was functioning in the city was doing their job and doing it the best they could, and that we were saving the dollars of duplication that we weren't doing that. Those are the best things about a family of people. And if you haven't guessed by today, I am not an I person. I am a we, our, us person. This is our city. It's my city too. And it is our community. And I absolutely believe and have the proven record to show you, if we do it together, we will be very, very successful.
All right, right on time. Appreciate that. All right, no clapping. Unless it's for the moderator, that's fine. We're just about out of time, and I do want to allow each of these candidates to have closing statements. 2 minutes up. Carolyn Goodman, since Chris Giunchigliani went first at the beginning, you can either go first or last here. You get the choice. Which do you prefer?
No, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to be here, John.
Okay,
you have been most kind, and it's wonderful to see you on the nice side, because I see you on the bad side sometimes. And making up little things that you see a snippet of something you said in the newspaper. I'm getting a bath by fire on that, because these things taken out of context have been a source of laughter in our home. I just want you to know I love this city. Duh. I raised 4 children here. Oscar will give me credit for raising our 4 children. We have 6 grandchildren. The 3 older children have gone entirely through the public system. And I am supportive as a voice to help make education as good as it can be. I met with Superintendent Jones yesterday to offer my support, tell him what the formula was that would work for special needs children. Anything that I can do, I am invested and vested in this city. I'm totally invested in what we all want to have for our community. I will stop at nothing and will give my full energy to that. You can take my word to the bank. There's nothing behind me that will ever indicate to you anything other than total truth and having done what I've done. So I hope you will all go to the voting box and vote. That's the most important thing. This is our country. We live in here, but I hope too that you'll vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you. You can clap now. Go ahead. Commissioner, 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you all for putting up with the two of us, but I think this has been fun, and that's what this is about. Again, transparency. All debates should be open. Hopefully we'll do more even on TV coming up as far as that's concerned. But what separates me is I have the most varied background of anybody. I have 16 years of serving on Ways of Means. I know how to tear a budget down and put one back together. And John can tell you, if you came to my committee and you didn't have an answer for who you were serving and why that budget was there, it went away. So I have that experience. But I also now have experience at local government, which is very different from the state budget. But most importantly, I have the energy, I have the passion, and I have the commitment. I believe in this town. And maybe I can sum it up best as a special education teacher. My work ethic is the strongest that my parents instilled in me. It's roll up your sleeves, get it done. I am the oldest of 6 kids. I chose to go into special education because I believe every person deserves a voice and a chance, just like every one of you in this room. And I have to tell you, what probably best prepares me to be mayor is what I learned in kindergarten. Learn some, play some, work some. Flush. Wash your hands. Hold hands going forward, and share. And so as mayor, I want to share your expertise, your ideas, and help bring them home and put them to work for you. So I also would be value and honor your support on June 7th. Chris Giunchigliani, the longest name on the ballot. Thank you.
Folks, my mic's going to come back in a second, but I do want to say that you really, I know I held you off on the applause until the end, but both these candidates deserve a lot of credit for their willingness to come before a couple hundred people or so and present their views. And it doesn't happen that often in many campaigns, so give them another round of applause for that.